Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. When you go to the doctor has a couple of choices. He can treat your symptoms, or he can treat the disease. Most often when it's a virus, your doctor will say it's a virus, so I'm going to give you something for your symptoms. And if it's a virus that's causing a stuffed up head and a congested chest, he'll give you something to decongest both your head and your chest. But when he can identify it as a bug, as a germ, he can treat the disease. And then they'll often try to treat you with antibiotics that will do away with the disease. You know, to some extent, we looked at Amos last week, to some extent, Amos treats symptoms. The symptoms were that this nation of Israel, did not treat its people as it was supposed to have treated them. It did not treat the poor, the widow, and the fatherless as God would have liked that nation to have treated them, as God expected the nation to treat them. Hosea will treat the disease. Hosea will address the disease. Hosea comes shortly after Amos. Hosea is apparently a career prophet to the north, and he's a resident of the north. Amos was one who kind of went up there, dropped his sort of prophetic load, and went back home again. Hosea lives there. Hosea is a resident. Hosea is probably given the strangest or weirdest command in all of the Bible. Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. When Yahweh first spoke through Hosea, Yahweh said to Hosea, "Go take yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits great harlotry by forsaking Yahweh." Yeah, you got it right. God says to Hosea rather, go marry a hooker. Because I want to use this as an illustration of what my people are doing. If I were Hosea, I might have said, can I get a second opinion on this? But Hosea doesn't. He went and took Gomer, yes, that's her name, Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. There are going to be 3 children, and only the first one does it say that she bore him a son. So given the fact that she's a prostitute, and given the fact that the next 2 kids, it just says she had children, we assume that maybe the first child was Hosea's, and the next 2 children were not Hosea's. But the birth of these children is there so that the names can mean something to the nation. So the first child is named Jezreel, which means Yahweh sows. And Yahweh is going to sow his wrath in this nation. Verse 6, she conceived again and bore a daughter. Notice it didn't say he bore him a daughter, bore a daughter. And Yahweh said to him, call her name Lo Ruhamah, not pitied, not loved. For I will no more have pity on the house of Israel to forgive them at all. Verse 8, when she had weaned, not pitied, she conceived and bore a son, doesn't say him, bore a son. And Yahweh said, call his name Lo Ami, not my people. For you are not my people, and I am not your God. Wow. That's the exact reversal of what God had said to them at Sinai. You are my people, and I am your God. And now God tells Hosea, name that third child Lo Ami, not my people. And every time that Hosea would call these kids for dinner, it would be an object lesson to this nation. Come here, little not loved. Come here, little not my people. Come here, God sows. And the names would remind the nation that God was not happy with where they were. The object lesson is not only in the names, but also in Hosea's life with Gomer. The nation of Israel had prostituted herself when it came to her relationship with her God. Yahweh was to be to her like a husband. Instead, she chased after other gods. And the imagery that's used through much of the rest of the book of Hosea is the imagery of this prostituted nation chasing after other gods instead of her real husband. Chapter 3 is a fascinating chapter. It's very short, 5 verses, but it does give hope for the nation. Chapter 3, verse 1, Yahweh said to me, "Go again, love a woman who is beloved of a paramour and is an adulteress," and we assume this is Gomer. "Even as Yahweh loves the people of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love cakes of raisins." Cakes of raisins were part of the involvement in the Baal worship. "So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver, and a homer and a leketh of barley. And I said to her, you must dwell as mine for many days. You shall not play the harlot or belong to another man, so I will also be to you. For the children of Israel shall dwell many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or pillar, and without ephod or teraphim. Afterward the children of Israel shall return and seek Yahweh their God and David their king, and they shall come in fear to Yahweh and to his goodness in the latter days." There's hope in chapter 3. God says to Hosea, go find Gomer. Apparently Gomer had run off. Go find her. Yeah, you're her husband, but you're going to have to buy her back. You're going to have to pay the price because she's not going to come back to you. You're going to have to do that. You pay the price, and you bring her back, and you make her your wife. Why? Because that will be an object lesson to this nation, that I will pay the price for my people. I will pay the price, and I will bring them back home. And of course, you and I know that he paid the price in his son's suffering, death, and resurrection. He paid the price to bring you and me back home. There are a couple other lines in Hosea. We give it short shrift when we do these little bits and pieces. But a couple of the lines that I think are important for us to take a look at. Hosea chapter 11, verse 1, this one comes up in the New Testament. 11, verse 1, when Israel was a child, God is going back in history. When Israel was a child, I loved him. And out of Egypt I called my son. I brought them up out of Egypt. The more I called them, the more they went from me. They kept sacrificing to the Baals and burning incense to idols. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took him in my arms, but they didn't know that I healed him. God says, I was their father. I taught him to walk. I took him by the hand. I led them with cords of compassion, with the bonds of love. I became to them as one who eases the yoke in their jaws, and I bent down to them and fed them. I was like a gentle farmer to them, but they didn't recognize it. Well, the line appears in the New Testament again. Out of Egypt have I called my son, in Matthew's account of the Nativity. When Jesus, Mary, and Joseph go on the flight to Egypt, when Jesus is a baby, when Herod's trying to kill all the babies, and Matthew says this was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt have I called my son. Now, when you read Hosea 11:1, it doesn't look like it points to Jesus. It points back to God calling the nation of Israel out of exile, out of captivity in Egypt. But that's exactly what Jesus would do too. He would bring his people out of captivity to sin. And so that line, out of Egypt have I called my son, applies both to old Israel and to Jesus coming out of Egypt, and to what Jesus would do for his people in his suffering and death and resurrection. Powerful verse. One more section we need to look at, and that's chapter 13, verse 9. I will destroy you, O Israel, who can help you? This is God talking to the nation again. Here's the results. Where now is your king to save you? Where are all your princes to defend you? Skip on down a little bit. He says in verse 14, shall I ransom them from the power of Sheol? Shall I redeem them from death? O death, where are your plagues? O Sheol, where is your destruction? Compassion is hid from my eyes. He says, should I rescue them from this? No. Let them have it. O death, where are your plagues? O Sheol, where is your destruction? That passage will be flip-flopped completely the other way in 1 Corinthians 15. When Paul writes about the suffering and death and resurrection, especially the resurrection of Jesus in chapter 15, he says, O death, where are your plagues now? O grave, where is your destruction now? And Paul taunts death and the grave with the line that comes from Hosea as he turns it completely backwards, because God has taken us out of that situation where we have to worry about death and the grave. Powerful reversal of what God was calling down on his people in the book of Hosea. And yet that is God. God will deliver his people. And an interesting sidelight, even the name of the prophet indicates that. Hosea is the same name as Joshua, which is the same as Yeshua, which is the name we know as Jesus.